All right, there we go. Good morning again. Today we're going to talk about um, extending the family or helping our extended family understand the autism diagnosis, understand what you as a family are going through, what kinds of adjustments you're having to make to help understand your child and to make them an inclusive part of the things that are going on with your family. And we're going to do that pretty much in two parts. We're going to talk about education, so understanding the diagnosis, understanding the things that are a part of the diagnosis, what your child may or may not be experiencing, because again, the autism diagnosis is a spectrum and it expresses differently in every child. And then also some things to help to include your family. So what are some of the things that, for example, we want our families to know about what we're going through? And maybe, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep saying going through, because you're not going through something. This is your family. This is these are your delightful children, but your experiences are different because of the diagnosis than what might be true for some families who don't have a family member with an autism diagnosis. So please excuse that. That is really not the right way to express that. But we're going to talk then about what are some of the things that you can do to include your family and some of the things that you want them to know about what makes your experience different. And this is going to be one of those mornings, I'm telling you what, because now it is also giving me a hard time about advancing my slides. There we go. All right, so let's start with what we can share with folks about what autism is. Autism is it's a developmental disability. That's how it's diagnosed and characterized, and it causes significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges that typically start to emerge during childhood. But as you know, if you're a parent, that how it expresses and what kinds of different sorts of challenges a child faces really differs. It varies so much from child to child to child. And there is no single known cause of autism. We really don't know. We don't have that pinpoint at this stage. We do know some things about what the neurology that look a little bit different, for example, in autistic brains versus neurotypically developing brains. But frankly, we don't know whether those neurological differences are a chicken or an egg, right? Is the brain different because the child is having to engage in some different kinds of environmental interactions, or are the differences in the brain resulting in different behaviors? We honestly don't know. And we do know that early diagnosis helps a person receive the support and services that they need. So those are just some of the very basic things that we know about autism. I am going to show you one of our favorite videos to share with families. You may have seen this. If not, then you're in for a treat. Yeah, but you can also share this with family members.
We are all different, and that's wonderful. Some differences are easy to see. Height, hairstyle, gender, eye color, and so on. Other differences can't be seen. Our favorite foods, fears, or special skills. Interestingly, the way we see the world is also different. For instance, what do you see in this drawing? Most people see a duck, but some of you might have seen a rabbit. Whichever you saw, you are correct. This is just a trick drawing to show you that all brains work differently. The brain is your body's computer. It works differently for all of us and controls how you learn. That's why we are all good at different things. How you feel, which is why we all feel different emotions. And how you communicate. Sometimes the brain is connected in such a way it affects senses and how we perceive and read situations and interactions. This is known as autism. Many people have autism, so it's likely you already know someone who is autistic. And for this reason, it's useful to know a little bit about autism. The special wiring inside an autistic brain can sometimes make the person good at tasks we may find difficult, such as mathematics, drawing, or music. It can also do the opposite, and activities we find too easy are incredibly difficult to them, such as making friends. The senses constantly send information to your brain about your surroundings and other people. However, when a person's brain and its senses don't communicate well, the brain can become overwhelmed and confused, affecting how they see the world. Picture yourself walking down the street. This is how an autistic brain may experience the same walk. Scary, isn't it? Sadly, in many cases, the person can't say out loud how they feel. So even though there's chaos going on in their heads, they seem okay on the outside, unable to ask for help. We all develop behaviors to help us feel calm in uncomfortable situations. We may look away, hug ourselves, chew our fingernails, fidget, bite our lips, and so on. Equally, autistic people develop behaviors that help them cope with these intense moments. These actions may seem unusual, but they're just their way to feel calm. When they happen, it means they are having a hard time. The kind thing to do is not to give them an even harder time by getting cross, ignoring them, or mocking them. Remember, just because a PlayStation can't read an Xbox game, it doesn't mean it's broken. People with autism need friends who are willing to take the time to know them. With good communication and plenty of patience, everyone would be better off. People with autism are not ill or broken. They simply have a unique view of the world. And with a little support from their friends, they might just be able to share that view with us. Autism can make amazing things happen.
There are some talking points from that you can use when you're having discussions with family and in order to help them understand more about the
One of the programs that myself and Zoki designed was
as much as I love Chris Hemsworth, that's not why we're here. There we go. If you've been to any of the presentations I've done, then you know that I am actually fairly skilled at getting through presentations without technical difficulties, and today is an exception. Good grief. I apologize. This is not, there we go. It's not typical. We have, we generally talk about autism as having three main areas that are challenges. And so these are areas that we would like to make sure that our family understand, that there are challenges that may be experienced in communication, in social interactions, and in behavior. For example, in communication, you can explain to family members that there are delays in language abilities, which sometimes even result in the child not being able to speak at all, and using some other type of communication system, for example, sign language, or they may not speak uh, generally either through vocal or through sign language, but may just grab your hand and show you what they want, right? They may engage in atypical speech patterns, a lot of repetition, or the way the speech sounds might be a little bit different. Some children with autism have a very monotone speaking pattern. Some of them put a lot of question marks at the ends of things, and other kinds of atypical patterns. They may have difficulty with conversations, which is something that's actually really important for family members to know, right? Because family members would like generally to have conversations with their, grandparents really want to have conversations with their grandchildren, and so forth. And they may have some difficulty with play skills. Uh, Again, they may have problems very broadly with social interactions. They may not have eye contact, which may or may not be appropriate for your family. There may be impairments and difficulties with facial expressions or forms of body language, both engaging in them, so being able to show people what they feel through their body language and their facial expressions, but also being able to understand other people's facial expressions and body language. And going along with that, difficulties with nonverbal or subtle communication, such as gestures. They may have, generally speaking, trouble identifying and communicating emotions. And again, that's a super important one to be able to have our families understand. Difficulty with initiating and maintaining friendships, which may affect, for example, relationships with cousins and other extended family members, and similarly affecting those kinds of relationship difficulties with sharing and with taking turns. And then finally, you may find some differences in the kinds of behaviors that they engage in. So as the video pointed out, there may be repetitive motor movements or repetitive actions. They may become fixated on a single idea of an item or a person. There are some children with autism just really want to only talk about one thing, and they'll want to talk to you about it forever, and it's their favorite thing. And that can become challenging for people who are interacting with them, for both for peers, but also for family members who, want to ask them other questions or have other conversation. They may show a preference for predictability or for sameness, and they may have difficulties when the schedule changes or when going or leaving places. And we're going to come back and talk about that specifically in a little bit, because that can affect different kinds of family interactions. They may have sensory challenges. So family gatherings where there are a lot of people and there's a lot of conversation going on around them, and a lot of other like cousins running around, things like that could present a real sensory challenge for a child with autism. Not every child with autism, but sometimes. And some of these things lead to tantrums and meltdowns and other behaviors for a variety of reasons. One, because of being overwhelmed. It may also be as a way to get themselves removed from the situations that are causing problems for them. There are a variety of different reasons, and I can't give you one specific one because it depends on your child, the child, and the situation, and other things in their environment and that have happened to them. So, but these are some of the kinds of behaviors that family members may see and may react to in particular ways and not understand why they're happening, or um, you may need to spend some time talking with them about these. I'm going to show you one more video, and then I'm probably going to have a really hard time getting back to the slides if the last video was any indication. But I really like sharing this one with people a lot because it was created by the same company that made the one that we just watched a minute ago, but it's actually they interviewed kids who are diagnosed with autism and then animated their responses to some questions about the kinds of experiences that they have. And I think this one does a really excellent job of putting that perspective from the first person onto the autism spectrum disorder and letting people kind of see from that perspective. So I really like this one.
Hi, I'm Jai. I feel like life is like a video game. When you start the game, you got easy, medium, hard, or expert. But someone just pushed me and I've slipped onto hard or expert. So I just wish if there was a toggle somewhere in the world, because this is all really, really, really hard.
Hi, my name is Seela and I have 3 cats. And I also have autism, and the things that I like most about it is that I know everything about cats.
Well, sometimes like my mind is all funny and I just can't really control my body, and it's kind of weird and frightening. And sometimes I feel like there's little shapes on me and I feel claustrophobic, even if I'm in the biggest of spaces.
Sometimes I just start to do this randomly for no reason, and I make weird noises without realising it.
I like to hold on to my worries at school, and then when I'm in my home, then I just want to take them all out.
For some reason I can hear colours, and it's very weird. Like if I hear the word sidewalk, I see the colour like walnut. And I think it's all words.
And I really like moving. I like spinning and jumping and wrapping myself in a blanket, and it makes me feel good and calm and happy.
I isolate myself and make sure I'm not around anyone.
That people don't understand that I don't like being touched here.
Sometimes it's hard for me to understand people because I can't tell what they are feeling.
The actions and their words don't really match up. So they are acting really sad, they're crying, and then they say, "This is so much fun!"
I should get Freddie as a teacher.
Sometimes when I'm really overwhelmed and I start shaking like this.
When I get all hooked up and I run away.
I love going out of the classroom. I want to go to my story.
I really, really, really love talking to my mind. And I have different personas. The happy puppy, the dumb puppy, the smart puppy, and the almighty, the normal puppy. And I have no idea what a normal puppy is like.
I would like to be treated as a friend, but sometimes people don't treat me like that.
To be treated the way they want to be treated. Being treated kindly.
I would like to be treated with a decent amount of respect.
I'm kind, I'm nice, and I'm helpful. Well, sometimes.
I hate to see my friends sad. Help me by listening to me. Just talk to me, just have fun, and I'll follow through eventually.
People can't just be autistic and not act like it. They always do stuff like it. Take the time to someone will take the time always go from the people to take the time to know them.
I use my autism for lots of things. It's good too.
It makes me just a little bit feel differently than you.
It gives me a gift of helping.
Okay, who wants to put money on whether I can do this transition? Okay. Look at me. All right. So as a parent, as a parent of a child with autism, you may have already had conversation with your extended family, or you may at this point be anticipating or planning on having conversation with family and wondering what is really some of the best ways to go about that. Um, I want to say first that you should anticipate difficult reactions, not that they will occur, but that it's important that we anticipate that they may occur so that you can go into the conversation with the right information and with the right kinds of responses to those things. But to stay positive when you have conversations with your family and friends, letting them know that your family um, is approaching the diagnosis with positivity and with the idea that you're going to have to make some adjustments to your family life, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. You should, however, recognize that extended family, because they're not a part of your part of the living situation, and that they may not have had any encounters with other children with autism, may have fears, they may experience grief because they think that this is some sort of death sentence, so to speak, for your child, that your child will never be successful, or that they will always have these horrible challenges or things like that, based on things they may have seen in the media or encountered in other places, and that you're going to have to help them to work through those and understand that those fears and that grief are things that they're going to have to get through, and that they're not necessarily founded fears, or that there isn't really necessarily a reason for grief, right? Some of that goes back to the educating that we just talked about. So helping your family to understand what is involved with the autism diagnosis, and that there are so many really wonderful and positive things, and that still happen, and that you just really have to not take that very negative approach to it. Be ready to answer their questions. If your family does not have a lot of experience with autism, then they're going to most likely have questions. And if you don't know the answer to a question, be honest, right? This may be new to you also. You may be very experienced, and you may have a lot that you already know. That's fantastic, but you may not. And if that's the case, be honest, and offer to explore it together with them. So, hey, you know what, Mom? I don't know that. Let's go. Uh, let's go Google that together and see if we can find some articles about that. Let's go to some sources that I know of and that I trust, and see if we can find the answer to that question. anticipate that there will be misunderstandings, and we're going to talk about some of those misunderstandings in just a second. And share with your family things that are specific to your child and how to best interact with and support them. So as you're having the conversations about, what is autism, um, we just ran through those main areas, communication, social, and behavior, but focus that conversation on the specific kinds of challenges that your child experiences so that your family can have a better idea of how to interact with your child. Right, because if you only give them that very broad, this is autism and it's all these different areas that it could affect, that really doesn't help them to focus in on how to best interact with your child and how to best support your child. Okay. So, myths and misunderstandings. If you don't have a lot of experience with autism, if this is your grandchild or extended family member is the first person that you have met and have interacted with that is diagnosed with autism, then you may have myths and misunderstandings about what is involved. One misunderstanding is that it's a form of intellectual disability. And while the CDC does report that about 41% of individuals with autism have an intellectual disability, that number may be overreported because it's difficult sometimes to actually measure or measure IQ for a child with autism because of some of the communication difficulties that they have. So that number in and of itself may be overinflated, but also we know that some of the ways that children with autism interact with the world result in some very um, with some very areas of specialty for them. So, for example, some kids with autism are very good at music, or as the video pointed out, math. Now, that brings up a whole separate sort of myth and misunderstanding for the like if you've watched Rain Man, maybe that's the only movie they've ever seen that had someone with autism involved, and so they expect your child to now go around ticking off all the numbers of every phone number in the phone book, right? So helping them to understand that is not necessarily a behavior that is seen in every child with autism, and that you know there are some individuals with autism who have incredible memories, right? Incredible abilities in mathematics or in music or in other things. But just as with any other population, it's not like all one or the other, right? So that it's not that they're necessarily in it's not necessarily that they have a form of intellectual disability. It's also not necessarily going to be the case that they are really good at math and know all the phone numbers, right? Another myth or misunderstanding that some people have is that individuals with autism can't or don't want social relationships. And that is also a myth. Most children with autism very much want relationships. They want to have friends. They want to be in relationship with family members, but they have challenges in how to go about doing that because of those difficulties, for example, with reading social cues like facial expressions. Because they have communication difficulties, so they don't quite understand how to start a conversation or how to maintain a conversation because they have those difficulties with being fixated sometimes on things. And so the only thing they want to talk about is Titanic. They're obsessed with the movie Titanic, but not everybody wants to do that. So other people don't want to engage in conversation with them on the same level. Right? It's not necessarily the case that they don't want to have relationships. It's that they have some special challenges with understanding the components of things that are involved in relationships and friendships. And so we spend time helping them to learn those things. What are some other myths and misunderstandings you might hear from family members? That some people think they'll grow out of it. Like this is just a stage, they'll grow out of that. And we know that that's not true. Autism is a lifelong, um, autism is lifelong. There are different things that our children learn that change how they interact with their family, that change how they interact with their environment, but you don't grow out of having autism. People might think, well, you just need to set better rules or consequences, right? They wouldn't act like that if your family was less chaotic and more structured. Or alternatively, you might need to lighten up. Like, listen, just let them do it. It's okay. It's no big deal. That's fine, right? Um, again, as a parent, one thing you're learning is that you do sometimes have to set up your family in a particular way to help support your child and to help them be most successful. Right. And so lightening up might not be the right answer, or better rules might not be the right answer. But other family members, sometimes friends, or frankly, let's face it, you probably, if you're a parent of a child with an autism, you've also encountered at least one stranger who has told you how you could better handle a situation. Right. Um, and those are things, and we're not going to worry about the strangers, although feel free to educate them as well. But for our family members, explaining why we're doing the things that we're doing and the way that we're doing them, um, to help them understand what is best to support your child. Yeah. Family members, when you talk with them about the autism diagnosis, may have negative reactions. And I alluded to that in an earlier slide, but we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail right now. They may not understand autism, and so they push it aside. It's not a big deal. They may think they know what autism is because they saw Rain Man, or they think that Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory has autism, or some other reason why they read an article in the New York Times, so they got this. And maybe they don't agree that it's the right diagnosis, or that they think they know how it should be handled. Or they don't know how to handle it, and it's overwhelming for them to consider that this family member has a diagnosis of autism. So what are the things that you can do in those situations? Well, we've already talked about some of the educational things that you can provide, but don't forget that there are others, professionals and other resources that can help. So things like what we're doing today a little bit, although I'm kind of straddling between talking to parents and talking to extended family members today, but there are some things out there that are specifically developed for other family members. You can put them in touch with the doctor that diagnosed autism. You can actually, in ABA, we're happy to have conversations with other family members if that will be of help to you. And there are other resources, and I'm going to share them. Autism Speaks has a whole bunch of resources, but there are many different resources out there, and we'll share those in a minute. Yeah. And of course, there are going to be things that you as a parent want your family and friends to understand, right? You want them to understand that we need to be flexible, right? So if you're at a family gathering, you might be late because there was something you were dealing with unexpectedly at home, or you might have to leave early if the fit, like the family gathering that I described earlier, where there's lots of cousins and there's a whole bunch of chaos, right? And it might be overwhelming, and you might have to leave early and skip out before you get to the big opening of all the birthday presents. And those things just have to be okay, right? But at the same time, sometimes we also need to be structured. Like maybe we need to have a little bit more structure to and routine to how something is going to happen. And last minute changes might not be so great, right? So understanding both things, I might need to be flexible and I might not be able to stay for the whole thing, but also, well, you know what? We have to do it in this order. Otherwise, things are not going to go well. And also that for many families with a child with autism, we can't just get a babysitter, right? Um, there's special challenges that come with people who don't know our children well, coming in to take care of them, and just a, you know 15-year-old teenager high school student might not be the right choice, right? So that there's extra work that's involved in going through that, and that we have certain rules for a reason, that many of the things that we are doing, we're setting up the environment in a particular way for our child to be successful, right? So, well, that we don't just give away free video game time. No, I'm sorry, grandma. We're not, he doesn't, it's not okay. No, it's not just okay if he goes and plays video games for the next hour while we do that, because we control how much video time he has, right? Or things like that. Uh, and some of those rules may relate to things that you're following for your ABA therapy, right? Which is a whole nother story, having families understand ABA and what is going on in that therapy situation. And I actually don't have slides about that, but we can talk about it when I turn off the recording if you want. But that they also may need some guidance on what it is that's happening in ABA therapy and why we're setting up certain kinds of why we're working with you to set up certain kinds of rules and particular ways of doing things for your child. You may also want your family and friends to know that, you know what, you're tired. It's a little extra work sometimes being um, a parent of a child with autism. Things that other families take for granted about that their child will or won't do, you might have to be a little bit more intentional about. You might have to be a little bit more on point all the time. Maybe you're tired. But that it's important to not stop including your family in things just because it's a little bit more difficult, maybe. And to not stop talking with us about those things, right? We want to keep a dialogue. Everybody's still family. Everybody's still a part of the same unit. So let's keep talking. Let's keep including everyone. And I think one of the things that every family that I talk to wants other people to know is that they do need to hear that you need to hear that you're doing a good job, right? Again, because there are extra things potentially that you're having to do, because you have to attend to things that someone with a neurotypical child doesn't necessarily need to attend to, because some things are more challenging than they are for other families. And because your child may engage in some kinds of behaviors that are more challenging than other neurotypically developing children engage in, it is really easy to feel like you're not doing a good job as a parent. And you need to hear from others that you are doing a good job. And I think if there's one piece of advice I could give extended family members, it's to not always be second guessing what's happening. It's not always to be giving unsolicited advice, but on the flip side, to be telling families you are doing a good job. You're, you're doing a good job. And with that, bit of advice. I'm going to switch over into just sharing some information and resources, and then I'm going to turn off the recording and we can open up for some discussion. All right, so there are many different kinds of resources that you can share with families at the Autism Society. Autism Speaks has a really cool 100-day toolkit that's specifically geared for families with younger children, but many of the things in there are applicable regardless of the age. And it has a section specifically on extended family members like grandparents. The VCU Autism Center and UVA both have autism information areas. Both of them have autism centers, so they both have some fairly extensive resources available. We have our YouTube channel that you're always welcome to share any of the videos that we have on the YouTube channel. They're completely public videos, so you can share them with extended family members who might need, like, well, why are you, what's this token board thing, and why are you using that? You can explain a little bit about it, but you could also then funnel them over to the YouTube channel where we have a video there about using, it's called Reward or Bribe. And it includes sections on using token systems and things like that. So there are different resources out there that you can share with family, and you can direct family to look at if they're interested in learning more, right? I the one thing I want to say about resources and web searches and things like that is that there are a lot of things out there that are also not necessarily true or not in your best interests, right? So you can go on and do a search for autism treatment and find links to things about, for example, using bleach, right? And what you don't want are family members going out and doing those kinds of searches and finding, oh, you could use bleach therapy with your child. Why aren't you using bleach therapy, right? So helping them to know what sources to look at for good, accurate information about autism is also a really important piece of that, right? Which is why I'm sharing these particular resources with you, so that you can help to steer them towards reputable and reliable and believable sources of things, as opposed to random stuff on the internet that anybody can say with no predict no necessarily having done any kind of background or research, or not having any credentials to be able to say those things, because that's what the internet is. We can say whatever we want, right? So just making sure that we're helping them identify those good sources of accurate and dependable and believable information. Okay, I am going to turn off the recording somehow. There we go. And